time.
It's better to shell out for Australia than to be shelled out by Japan. Keep on buying war bonds.
Are we recording?
Exactly. Yeah, we're rolling.
Okay, sorry.
We
yes.
could just listen
No,
to you read.
Well, I promise you, he was a great journalist, and
Yes.
so if you think about the great journalists who've become politicians, Disraeli or Churchill, you can see that he has a real gift for putting things simply.
Great journalists who've become politicians: Disraeli, Churchill, and Boris Johnson.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't put myself in the same league as those guys, but yeah, it's useful to be able to say things clearly. Yeah.
So good. Well, let's jump into it.
Yes.
So, welcome to the colony. Welcome to Australia.
Yeah, those were the days. Yes.
Welcome to Australia. How are you enjoying it so far?
Always loving it. Always loving it. And I was in New Zealand, and I'm here in Oz. It's fantastic to be here, and so proud of some of the things that we're doing together, the UK and Australia.
And there is a long history of Australians playing a large role in your campaigns for mayor.
Sure.
I think you had Linton Crosby.
Oh yes. So I owe everything to Linton in the first stages when I was campaigning to be mayor of London. Linton would tell you himself that when he first saw me appear and do a press conference, he turned and he said to Dawn, his wife, he said, "That man will never be mayor of London." And then a few months later, I recruited him to my campaign, and he turned it round, and he was brilliant. He was a great. The thing about Linton is he lifts people's spirits, and he got the whole team working together so well, and I have such happy memories of that time.
So how did you know? Was there a point when you decided you wanted to go into politics?
Yes, I think it was in my mid-30s. I was a journalist. I'd been a journalist for a while, and late 30s, mid. And I was fed up with. I was always attacking people, and you know what? I tell you, it was old John Major, who was actually rather a nice man. He's since sort of, we disagreed quite a lot about some issues, but I felt that I was being so kind of cruel. It's so easy as a journalist just to take pot shots at these guys, and you sit behind the garden wall and you chuck your rock and you listen for the tinkle of the greenhouse glass and you rub your hands together, but you're never really trying to make things or help people very much. Of course it's very important to bring new facts into the public domain. You can do great campaigns as a journalist. I mean, journalism is a great profession. But political journalism, sometimes you feel, you should get, honourably, you should try and get on the pitch if you're going to say all this stuff.
And so your entry into politics was, how did that all happen?
I did the customary thing. I fought a losing seat in 1997. I got absolutely vaporised in the fight against a Welsh biochemist in Clwyd South.
The bloody Welsh.
No, he's a very nice guy. He's a very nice guy. Martin Jones the Vote, as he was called, and I got, I did that, and then I was lucky enough in 2001 to find a seat in Henley-on-Thames, and that was great. And that was Michael Heseltine had been my predecessor, and again, we disagreed about a few things, but he was very kind to me, very kind.
So good. And then how did the idea of running for Mayor of London arise?
Well, that was basically, I think that it arose because the Conservative Party had run out of better ideas. They couldn't find anybody else, and David Cameron, my dear old chum Dave, had asked just about it. He'd asked the former head of the BBC, they'd tried Jeffrey Archer, who had to go to prison instead, or whatever happened to him. They tried just about everybody. And finally, I think I was like the 8th, 9th preference choice for the Conservatives. And it was thought to be very difficult because Ken Livingstone, who was a sort of 180 pound, 180 whatever, he was not 180 pounds, nothing. He was a very, very tough candidate to beat. He was the guy who'd been mayor for. He was a dynamic, charismatic, hard left
Yeah.
politician, and he had some good ideas, but he'd also been around a bit too long, so he was potentially beatable. And thanks to Linton, we found a way of doing that, and then I spent 8 years running London, which was just bliss. I mean, just bliss.
So good. And I loved reading your book, particularly about
I can't believe
time.
you've read it. I'm so glad. I'm so glad.
And I'm getting married on Saturday, so I spent the days before my wedding reading your book. But it was brilliant. I couldn't put it down.
Well, congratulations on getting married. How exciting!
It is very exciting.
Well, are you getting married in Sydney?
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
wonderful.
Yeah, it's great.
Well, it's a big week for you, then. My
know.
God. What day is it today? It's Thursday. My God, I'm honoured that you're here.
No place I'd rather be.
Yeah.
But what I did love about your book was your recount of your time as the Mayor of London.
Yes.
And you did some really innovative things that I think a lot of people don't really know about, certainly here in Australia.
Yeah.
The cycling revolution.
Yes, that was huge.
I loved that. Hosting the London Olympics.
Yes.
Designing a whole new bus with the rear platform.
Yes.
Extending
that
the
was
tube.
all me. Yes, the Olympics. We won the Olympics before I became mayor, and I just delivered them, and which was a huge.
Which is no small feat.
No, it was no small feat. It was a big undertaking, but we did it. We did it very well. We did it on time and on budget, and it was great fun.
And there seemed to be a theme throughout all of these really bold policies. You were kind of not at odds with, but there was resistance within the bureaucracy. There would be people telling you, oh, it's just not possible to design a brand new bus.
Yes.
All these things.
Well, of course. And the problem with the bus, I was told, because what I wanted was to bring back the hop-on, hop-off platform. The open platform moving gently through the streets that I loved so much when I was a child. And it was the beauty of the old route masters, where you could get on the back and you could run, you could see the bus, and then you could sprint down the street, you know, and if you really wanted to get your appointment, you could bust a gut, and then you could jump on the bus as it moved away, right?
Wow, yeah.
And that was all taken away. That excitement, that freedom, health and safety. They said no, because they said people kept falling off the back of the bus and breaking themselves, you know. And so I said, no, we got to bring back that element of it's beautiful having an open platform, and you know, like they have on the trams in California. And so the problem was that Brussels, they said no, Brussels won't let us do it.
Really?
Yeah, which was nonsense, and that's when I knew that, you know, they often use Brussels as an excuse.
Right.
It wasn't really true, because the buses weren't really going to be exported around the rest of Europe. They were purely for the London market, and so we designed it. And a brilliant guy called Thomas Heatherwick designed the bus, and a guy called Daniel Moylan, who was my deputy mayor for transport, one of my deputy mayors for transport, he did a great job on it. And it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing.
So good. And I think there's quite an iconic clip that goes around on social media of this. I think someone asked you, what do you enjoy doing in your free time? And you said, I design buses.
Oh, I do. I know.
And that has been, I think you've been immortalised as
I've got a slight weakness for
Boris the bus man.
I do. I don't know what it is. I like to make buses out of, you know, like an old wine crate.
Yeah.
Okay? And you know, typically they'll be divided into two levels, and then I make little passengers.
So
And
good.
I sound like a complete nut. I realise I sound like a complete nut, but I like to draw. I like to paint the passengers in, and do the bus and put little wheels underneath.
That's brilliant.
I do like it. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's so good. So then, after being mayor of London, you really made your mark there, and then you went. Did you go back into Westminster, and
yes,
then
so I
Brexit?
did. I did. So what happened then was, it all got more sort of difficult, because we had this terrible moment of decision for the country, in which, you know, suddenly Dave Cameron said we've got to have a referendum on whether we're going to be in or out of the EU. And to be frank, a lot of, you know, I don't think people were prepared for that, and I don't think the government was very well prepared for it. But I think it was a political stratagem to kind of get rid of the UKIP guys, and people like me, you know, I'd always been a Eurosceptic. I'd always been anxious about the democratic implications of the EU project. But suddenly we were all forced to say, right, are we going to stay in or are we going to get out? And so I had to think, well, where is this thing really going? And is it really right for the UK? And the way I looked at it, we were locked in a system that was really not, it's unlike anything else in the world. You know, you're trying to create this single country out of lots of different countries, and it's very anti-democratic. You know, you don't know who is making the laws, and you don't have the power to kick them out. So they're sitting in Brussels or Strasbourg or whatever, and they're coming up with this stuff, and then they're voting it through in these meetings in the Council of Ministers or in the European Parliament. The people of Britain have no control over that. And our Parliament couldn't reverse the laws that were being made. And I thought, look, we're living in a globalized economy. I believe in free trade. I believe in having, you know, global standards for safety of products, safety of car engines, safety of toys, whatever, safety of food. That Brussels, you know, should be just. Why do we need Brussels to keep passing all these laws? And more, you know, about employment laws and God knows what. I mean, really very detailed prescriptions that were, I think, part of the reason why Europe is so sclerotic by comparison with, say, America. And so it was a very tough choice because, you know, it was going to mean a lot of, I could see that if we voted to leave, it was going to mean a lot of people would be upset and blah, blah, blah. But I just thought long term, it was the right thing for the country because, you know, I don't think the EU model is really working. And look what's happening now in France and so on, and look what's happening in Germany. So I'm absolutely convinced it was the right thing to do. But it was a tough old decision. And so I then.
And you came out when it was very unpopular.
I helped to lead the campaign to come out, and that was very exciting. And you know, we won, and slightly against people's expectations. And you know, then you know, we had this moment when it's all in Unleashed, but you know, I could have conceivably become prime minister then, but I wasn't ready for it. I mean, I hadn't prepared any kind of team to, you know, run the country. That wasn't the objective at all, and it was all a bit of a muddle at that stage. And Theresa May took over, and then she made me foreign secretary. And then, but the problem was that after the vote to leave in 2016, the British establishment couldn't really work out how to deliver Brexit. They couldn't get it done. And so the second thing they needed me to be mayor, but then they also needed me to get Brexit done.
Yeah, that's so brilliant. I mean, we had a very similar kind of referendum here on the voice to Parliament.
Oh,
so
yes.
the Indigenous Voice.
Well, I remember that, yes.
And it did, I mean, reading your book and getting more of an insight into the Brexit campaign, it did remind me a lot of the dynamics here.
Tell me why, that's very interesting.
Well, you had the whole political and business elite and establishment coming out in favour of the voice, supporting the voice, and this was something that had been worked on for, 10 plus years.
It was quite complicated, wasn't it?
It was, and so it was to put an Indigenous voice or body into the Constitution.
Right.
And so how any of that would work, how this voice would be interpreted in relation to the laws, what consultation powers it would have, it was all completely unclear. And it was thanks to Jacinta Price and a number of very courageous, a small number of courageous conservative politicians in Australia that the coalition, the centre-right opposition, came out against the voice, and that is really what swung it. But when they came out, it was looking as though the voice would get in, like overwhelmingly, it was polling at 70% at one point.
Wow.
And so really the courage that you displayed in Brexit, it really mirrors the dynamics of what happened here in Australia.
How fascinating.
And it's interesting that at those points in history, there are individual leaders that emerge to turn the ship.
Yes. Well, people said afterwards that I'd certainly with others, Michael Gove and others, we'd certainly played a pretty important role, and it was great fun. But the problem was we couldn't get it done, and they didn't really want to leave the EU.
Yeah.
So they kept delaying and pretend, and coming up with excuses, and so
There we
In
go.
2019, I had to come in and do it.
So good, and we are glad you did. Let's move on to some of the issues that are facing our world right
Yes.
now. Ukraine. You are one of the greatest supporters of Ukraine, and I think you probably are the person who really galvanized the Western world around Ukraine. What is the state of the war now, and where do you see it going in the next kind of couple of years?
Never forget how brilliantly the Ukrainians have already done.
Yeah.
We always underestimate the Ukrainians. You know, they were going to lose in a week, remember? They were going to be crushed like aphids, like eggshells. They were going to be wiped out by Putin's tanks. And in fact, they sent them packing. And they sent them packing from Kiev, from Kharkiv, from Kherson. They've still got an enclave in the Kursk region. Yes, they're having a tough time at the moment, but the Russians still have not taken Pokrovsk.
And the
After 6
Russians
months.
have lost a lot.
The Russians are losing 1,500 or more a day.
Yeah.
And it's, anybody who thinks this, the Ukrainians are doing brilliantly. And, we don't make that point enough. We don't celebrate the Ukrainian achievement enough. And they are going to win. And it's the most important thing people need to understand. And the reason I care about it so much, I went to Ukraine quite a lot when I was foreign secretary, and I thought it was a beautiful place, and I liked the Ukrainians, and I could see that they were a nation that wanted to be free. And, when a country wants independence, and when they believe in their nation, that's a very powerful force. And that's why Putin's basically not going to win now. He's disproved his own thesis about Ukraine. He said it wasn't really a country. Boy, no one really believes that anymore.
Yeah.
The Ukrainians have one of the most passionate, powerful national feelings you can see anywhere in the world. And what they need now is three things. They need the weapons faster. They need a big Lend-Lease type financial support, $500 billion. And there's $300 billion, by the way, of Russian funds. A lot of it in Belgium that we should unfreeze and give to Ukraine to help repay the Americans. And finally, we need to set out what the solution is.
Yeah.
And, until the West has the courage to explain to Moscow what the end state is and why they've lost, we won't fix this. Because Moscow needs to know, Putin needs to know that the end game is going to be Ukraine in the Western security architecture and Ukraine in the European institutions, whether it's the EU or NATO. And until he understands that, he's going to keep trying. But so it's so vital. So why I'm kind of optimistic about Trump.
Yes. That was going to be my next question.
I know, I could see you, itching to ask it. I remember when he was president last time, and actually, he was tougher, he was stronger on Ukraine than the Democrats were. He gave them the Javelin missiles, and I think that the reality is that, yes, of course he'll try and do a deal. I don't think he'll try and do it before his inauguration. I don't think I've talked to him, but he doesn't think he'll be able to do it before then now. But he will try and fix something up. But I don't think that he will want, I just don't think Donald Trump will want, as I know him, he won't want to do anything that ends up humiliating America, humiliating the West, because I think he's a patriot, and I think I think his heart's in the right place. So so the reason I'm optimistic is because I think he'll take the decisive action.
And I think the West needs confidence.
They need. We've been dithering. We've been dithering.
Exactly.
Freya.
Exactly.
We've been dithering, and we've been spending far too long stopping Ukraine from losing, but not having the guts and the clarity to help Ukraine win. And
that's a brilliant note to end on. I think the world, and especially the West, and the Anglosphere needs more politicians with courage.
It does.
So thank you,
Thank you very much. And thank you for... I'm going to keep my copy of The Forgotten People.
Yes. We've got a Menzies fan right
here. Great gentleman.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
All the very best.
That
Thank
was
you.
awesome.
Thank you. Thank you.